in the online space, we want this freedom business, and we're marketed this amazing laptop lifestyle, go wherever you want, have all this time freedom. I started because at the time my son was really young and I wanted to be able to have the flexibility to be more present with him. Not necessarily these dreams about, wow, taking off to Bali tomorrow. I want to spend time with this baby, nurse him, and do something that I care and I'm passionate about. Freedom looks different for everyone, but a lot of us started with this idea of freedom in mind, yet reach a point where we feel actually really caged in and trapped in our business. Over the last 10 years, hearing this over and over and over, there's two general themes that I've seen as ringing true for what's going on. The first reason, it's also the main reason keeping people from growing when they're a newer business and getting to six figures and multiple six figures. The second is more common for people who are already at the multi-six-figure range and are wanting to jump to seven figures, 7+ figures and beyond and make their business very scalable.
This is the Miracle Zone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Miracle Zone podcast. And today we are going to explore something that I hear so often, which is entrepreneurs saying that they feel like they're caged in their business. And over working the last 10 years or so and hearing this over and over and over, there's two kind of general themes that I've seen as ringing true for what's going on when we have this caged in feeling in our business, which also I want to point out is really interesting because a lot of the reasons that people start businesses, especially in the online space, is because we want this freedom business and we're marketed this amazing laptop lifestyle, go wherever you want, have all this time freedom, right? And a lot of that is the reason that a lot of us choose, okay, I'm going to try this entrepreneurial thing. Even though sometimes it's way more practical. For me, for example, I started because at the time my son was really young and I wanted to be able to have the flexibility to be more present with him and be present at different times of day and to control my own schedule. And so it was freedom, even though it was a very different kind of freedom, right? Because when you have a tiny little one, it's not necessarily these dreams about, wow, taking off to Bali tomorrow. It was more, wow, I want to spend time with this baby so that I can actually nurse him and so that I can also have time to do something that I care and I'm passionate about. And so also I can squeeze in some naps during the day. Freedom looks different for everyone, but a lot of us started with this idea of freedom in mind. Yet a lot of us reach a point where we feel actually really caged in and trapped in our business. So today, let's explore that. So I want to start with the first one. So the first reason that I hear people saying I feel caged in my business is really interesting because it's also the main reason that I see that's keeping people from growing, especially when they're a newer business and getting to six figures and multiple six figures. The second reason I'm going to share is another caged in reason that I see that's really common. And that one I see is more common for people who are already at the multi-six figure range and are wanting to jump to seven figures, 7+ figures and beyond and make their business very scalable without impacting their time freedom, their energy freedom. So I'm going to dive into the first one first. The first one that I think is really common, especially when people are more starting out or have been at it and are still getting a sense of the ropes and the flow of the business and getting into more of this entrepreneurial mindset. The main thing that I see specifically for light leaders and coaches and healers and other creatives in this space is a really interesting one. And it has nothing to do actually with the business part or the business architecture or anything fancy related to the business itself. It has a lot to do with authenticity. And what I like to say is you feel caged in, but it's like you're caged in your aura, right? You're caged in your expression. And it's that point where we're not 100% sure who we're serving and how we're serving them, and what we're communicating and how we're communicating. And so a lot of what we're doing looks like we're doing things we think we should do, and we're also doing a bit of performing because we should do things a certain way and we think so. So we're going to put on the act. So in terms of how we show up on social media and what we say we support people with, we are trying to fit a certain box or idea or concept or identity of what we think it should look like in order for it to work, instead of rooting in deep authenticity. So this leads to this feeling of contraction and being caged. And we think it's in our business that we're caged, but it's actually in our expression and our authentic presence and how we are showing up with people. So I'm going to give you a really practical example of this. And it's something that I just call pretending to be a muggle when you're not a muggle, right? So I have so many entrepreneurs and business owners coming to me who've been at this for a bit, and some of them have been at it for a while, but they just feel like their business isn't growing and they're feeling trapped and they're falling out of love with their business and they don't know what it is. And when we dive deeper to see what's going on, it's that they're growing a certain business, but it's not in alignment with their authentic expression, what they're here to grow and create and how they're meant to serve now. So specific examples, they might be, in quotes, a physiotherapist, or they might be, in quotes, a Pilates expert, or they might be, in quotes, a yoga teacher trainer, or they might be, in quotes, fill in the blank of something that has a very common understanding in the muggle world of what that is. But then when we dive deeper and we're exploring, okay, what's actually going on here? It's like you are actually a shamanic, cross-dimensional healer, or you are secretly working with the dragons and channeling light language, right? And so what's actually happening doesn't fit the front face of your business. And so you're holding back something for some reason. So for me, I can use an example. When I started channeling light language and working with light codes, at first it was weird. It was like, I don't get this. I know it's powerful, but I want to explore it, get to know it better before I'm out there in the social media space sharing it and just channeling different languages, right? So I had to do some work with that. And so on the front of it, I was still supporting people with business coaching and business mentorship. I was supporting people with business management advisory, right? All things that I still do and still support people with. But there was this underlayer of things, being a channel, being intuitive, being a healer, all of that wasn't front facing. And so that means I wasn't sharing that. And also it meant that then people couldn't find me because there were people out there who were looking for somebody who was not exactly fitting the mold. They didn't just want any old business mentor. So that's one area that I think is really common. And what I find is when we land in authenticity of what our skill sets are and integrate all of these different parts of us that we don't necessarily own or show to the world, and show up as our full selves in our wholeness, in our truth, in our authenticity, then there's a certain vibration there that allows us to put that frequency out more strongly into the world, and then draws in those who are a match for that frequency and that energy. And so we can uncage ourselves and uncage ourselves from this contained, constricted energy and aura. And then we start to radiate, then we start to emanate, and then we start to attract and magnetize those who we are here to really serve. And so that's what I really see make the biggest difference. And sometimes it's not some thing that I have like secret powers or whatever, supernatural abilities or whatever that is. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's an opinion or a message that we haven't shared for some reason because we don't think it's on brand, or it's not appropriate, or there's some shame around it, or it's a little too edgy. But what I've seen with my clients is when we allow ourselves to let that out, we stop choking it in, it's all stuck here in our throat, and we allow that to be out there and really seen and received, that's when the business takes off to a whole other level. That's that inflection point is when that happens. And before we start blaming all of the other things in the business and getting overly caught up in my schedule and my productivity and systems and all the things, start first with that internal check of authenticity. And am I expressing in my truth? Am I caged in my business, or am I caged in my expression of my authentic self and how I'm showing up for my clients, showing up for others in the community, for my audience, and for the whole world, right? Because that also shows up in how you engage with family members and with friends, because as you start showing up differently, relationships shift and change. And I think that's why there's also a lot of fear there around that. So that's the first reason of why you feel caged in your business. The second one I want to mention is one that then becomes more common when businesses are growing and thriving and successful, and they're really wanting to jump into that multi-seven-figure mark for their business. And so many times, to already get successful, to already get where they've gotten, there's already been a nice alignment of, okay, what I'm sharing, and that it's not like an internal caged in my expression. I'm feeling comfortable showing up. I'm feeling more comfortable being visible. Yes, of course, there's different ways that I want to offer new things or new ideas that are emerging. It's constantly changing, but there isn't this core feeling of there's something I'm holding back, or I'm afraid of sharing some inauthenticity in performance that's going on. So then what's going on? The second reason that I hear when people say, I feel caged in my business, or I'm not really feeling free and I have no time and I have no energy, has more to do with the how of the business is being run. So I talked about this a little bit on the previous episode 24 of the Miracle Zone, so you can check that out. But this one has a lot more to do with the systems and structures that you put in place that actually give you that time freedom and that energy freedom to be able to continue to show up for the business, and for the business to continue to grow and to scale and to be able to duplicate and amplify without pulling more and more on your energy, because that starts feeling really heavy, right? And so that has a lot to do with, okay, what is the architecture of my business? And looking at these different areas of support team that I have in place and doing an audit there of who do I have and are they the right fit and are things moving efficiently and what could be done there to support them further, and also an audit of systems. And so what systems are we using? What automation are we using? Am I working with AI or not? What is here to help me get out of the weeds of my business and out of anything repetitive and strictly focus on my miracle zone? So I do have my miracle business blueprint that you can check out, and it shares the 7 pillars that support you to be in your miracle zone as you're building out your business to 7+ figures and onwards. And so there's various things here you can look at and you can check that out. But what I want to just mention here is a lot of times this is like the unfun work, right? We're growing, it's fast paced, the revenue is increasing, we're getting more clients, it's exciting. And then often we reach a point where I can't expand further unless I do that pause and reflect and do the systems audit, do the teams audit, and see, okay, what do I need to upgrade in terms of my foundational structure to allow me to scale and for it to actually feel lighter and lighter, so I can be more and more in my miracle zone. Because you're here to really be the visionary, to be the creative, to be the alchemist, to be the pillar of light in your business. And so that should feel like you're more and more in that role, and you're just supporting to take critical decisions without getting into everything everything. And that's why I always talk about, obviously, delegating management as well, because not only are you out of the weeds of the business, then you're out of the weeds of managing it. You have somebody else making sure that the right thing is getting done at the right time by the right person, so that you don't have that weight of management also to do. That's my invitation to you, is to really sit with, okay, am I feeling caged in my business or unfree? Do I hear that story playing out in my head? And when and if that is happening, to ask myself and feel into, is it more of this internal cage that I spoke about, this caged aura situation, cage expression situation, or is it more of an architectural, structural, systemic question that needs to be explored? And I really invite you to do this and take the time to explore that, because this thing that's keeping you feeling caged and stuck is a really big hint about what's going to be the lever that you can pull to really amplify and grow and scale a lot faster. When you release yourself of this caged feeling, it's going to allow you to pop that top off and really take it to the next level. All right, lovely. I'll see you next week. Bye now.
I trust ID.
Thank you for tuning in to the Miracle Zone. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a transmission. And if today's episode and conversation resonated, leave a review and share it with a fellow visionary leader. In the links, you can access my free Miracle Business Blueprint, the 7-part framework I use with my clients to create a thriving, scalable, and self-sustaining business that gives you more freedom, not less. Plus, you'll receive a guided process to identify where to focus first, so you can spend more time leading in your miracle zone right away. Let's build the new as a collective for the collective. Together, we're not just creating miracles, we're living them. Until next time, stay in the miracle zone.